Hey everybody, welcome back to Shit Creek Survivors, where we share stories of resilience and tools for resilience. Now, this week we got a special episode for you. I'm actually going to be sharing my experience of going into a local jail recently and sharing my story, not only of being shot and, all the muck duck I had to go through, but more importantly, my near death experience getting sober and how I found out resilience is just not giving up. And although they may be in a certain place for a certain period of time, it doesn't mean that that defines who they are. And it can even be turned into something positive that other people can learn from. So without further ado, here we go. Today, I've got a little story about something I did. All right.
Yes, let's hear about this. Jailhouse Rock that you got going on.
This is this is a story of not be careful what you wish for, but you know, if you ask God to be used, He will send you somewhere.
You-
And I was actually getting a sign made for the side of my truck. I've got a sign for you that I'm going to drop off in St. Louis. It says Shit Creek Survivors. It's got all the
You should.
emblems of like where we're at and like all that kind of stuff, stories of resilience, tools for resilience. So when I was getting them, I was picking them up, and the girl who was handing them to me started asking me about it. She's like, "What is this?" And I'm like, "Well," and I kind of said, me and my former partner, we were both dealing with PTSD. We both handled it with alcohol. It wasn't really working. We found that faith was actually something we were dabbling in, and then we ran into each other and kind of intersected right at the right time. Kind of like, holy
Hmm.
smokes, it's working for me too. And she's like, "That's really neat. I know a guy in Bartow County, which is where I live. I live in Cartersville, Georgia, but it's in Bartow County." And she's like, "I know a guy who used to be addicted, I believe it was meth or heroin. And now he has created a sober living space behind a church here in Cartersville." And I was like,
Right.
that's cool. And she talked about the idea of peace, like kind of people, places, and things. Like when you come out
Yeah.
of a rehab facility or if you come out of jail, sometimes it's just really not a great idea to go home to where everything was happening in the first place.
Well,
You're
sure.
so like for me with alcohol, well, I'll get into that in a bit, but you don't need to be hanging out with the people you were doing the thing you don't want to
The
do
same old
anymore with.
routines can come into play too quickly. Yeah, I get it. That makes perfect
Exactly.
sense.
Old environment, that sort of deal, right? And so I thought it was a really cool thing. And he had a crazy story about, and I'm going to have him on here at some point. I talked to him today
Yeah.
about it, and he's going to share his whole story, including breaking into his dad's church, being on the run for a week,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
turning himself in. He was on the news, all this kinds of stuff, and eventually turning his life over to Christ. And now that sober living space is actually behind the church that he attempted to rob, which was his dad's church that he was a pastor at. So we're going to let him come in and do that story. But the woman that I talked to at the sign store actually talked to him, gave him my information, and I get a phone call about a week ago saying, "Hey, I want to connect. This is what we're doing." And he explained to me that on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, they actually go into the Bartow County Jail and they work with these guys in a program trying to get them moving and off their feet. So that means a couple things. One is what we just talked about when they get out, how to handle that, people, places, things, how to stay sober, make sure you're going to meetings and all that kind of stuff. At the same time, they're training them, the Chattanooga Technical Institute. They come down and they actually give these guys certifications on welding, and a couple other things. So it's really kind of like boots on the ground. You actually walk out of jail with a trade. And it turns out that a couple of the guys that I was meeting with today who were in house in jail,
Mhm.
they actually chose to extend their sentence so that they could attend this program, so that they could actually do the program in full and walk away with a skill. And they were granted that
Okay.
privilege. So again, this is the information I got, right? So I'm walking into it and well, I get a phone call again, and he's saying, "I'd love you to come in and share your story." And I'm like,
Oh, I
"Okay."
like
Uh,
that. Yeah,
and
cops
I'm
going back to prison to talk about stories are always a good go over really well, don't they?
right. So I'm thinking, does it make sense for me, a former police officer, to go in there and tell him how I got shot and my feelings were hurt and, and all this kinds of stuff. And, but I just said yes, feeling like if I needed to, I could kind of jump ship. But so
Feel the crowd.
last,
You say you start talking about it a little bit. You feel the crowd, and just kind of go the direction of the current seems to take you. I guess that would be the best way. I know we talked a little bit about it offline, but I'm glad you waited to tell me more of it here because I love being genuinely surprised when we start talking about things. But we did talk about it a little bit offline earlier. Like I
yeah,
feel like that authenticity vibe comes out when you're telling the truth and you're being honest with yourself and you're telling the whole story. If you would have glossed over the part about being a cop and not said anything about it, it might have come off like
right,
maybe you're hiding something or not telling everything, and then the message wouldn't have been received clearly, and
right,
people have just been like in one ear out the other or something. So you never know. Just gotta
yeah.
follow your gut there. But how
And I
did it
just,
turn out? Anybody throw
well,
feces at you or?
no, nothing like that. Nothing like that. Like I prayed really hard about it last night. I couldn't sleep last night, all that kind of stuff. And like I like decided, I didn't decide, I don't know how it worked, but somehow in the prayer, it came to me that this isn't about me,
Right.
right? Tomorrow's not about me. Tomorrow is doing what we talk about doing and giving as many tools to someone that could help them in recovery. This is the
Yeah.
same thing for a person in jail. It's the same thing for a person in AA, meaning this is a person, same thing for a person in normal society, right? I'm just coming to them and trying to let them know what I went through, what I learned, and what worked, right?
Yeah.
That includes faith. So now I decided I'm about to go into this facility and I'm going to talk about Jesus. This is not something I usually do, right? Usually it's like I was a police officer, blah, 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 blah. Now, it didn't actually change my presentation that much. I've given the presentation, but it was a much different situation. You know, once you get past like 10 locked doors and they're locking behind you and you realize you're stuck in here too, you know, and like, and the room I was in, the door locked behind, and, you know, there's like, I think there's about 12 individuals in the room. For a period of time, I was in there alone with them for like 15 minutes, and I was just telling my story because I was in there for like an hour and a half.
All right,
So
Clarice. Did the lamb start to scream?
the what?
Did the lamb start to scream, Clarice?
No
No Hannibal Lecter moments.
Hannibal Lecter moments. Just man, I
Walked
was
in there
nervous.
with him though. Yeah, I would be too. Like
I was very nervous, and it
you have
wasn't
no
about.
idea what they're thinking or what they could do. But
And
I'm sure it
there
was
was
fine. I think I
there
put you
was
right in with the
yeah
unruly ones.
there was that, but then I had to come to the like almost agreement in my head. I'm like, if I get stabbed, that's fine. If I get like if something physical actually happens and someone attacks me, that's a whole nother thing. But if I go in here and I genuinely talk about my story and I
Yeah,
genuinely talk about how faith, although I didn't want it to a lot of the times, help me, then that might be my purpose there.
yeah.
So almost, yeah,
That's
just,
a message worth being stabbed for.
yeah. So exactly. Exactly. I'm worth it. Yeah, it's worth it. And then I've got another cool story. Um, and so one of the things I tried to do, and my buddy Darius, who I met down here in Atlanta, he's no longer with us. Unfortunately, he took his own life. But he was one of the first people I told the story to, who wasn't, police officer or anything like that. And he told me, he was like, Cam, like that's a good story. The way you tell it is pretty good. Like, because you throw in some funny bits there. And so like the funny bit that I threw in when I first got there, I'm like, hey, my name's Cameron. I'm here to talk to you about PTSD and faith. Now I am going to warn you ahead of time. I am a former police officer, but if it helps, I did get shot in the face. And they just started laughing. And I was like, honestly, guys, I am here to share a story with you. Um, you know, uh, what did I say? I
I
was
just
like,
love that intro. That's sort of great little self-deprecating humor that everybody in jail talks about bad cops and stuff. Even if they weren't bad
yeah,
cops dealing with them, they're all so bad. You're like, if
yeah,
it helps any, I already did get shot in the face. So
yeah. Like I already got shot in the face. Um, and I was like, but what I'm really going to share with you is like my testimony. It's not about being a police officer. It's about what happened. And so I started, I was like, I was born into, a great family, lots of love, um, lots of God. And then around like 5 years old, something happened, and I'm going to tell you about it towards the end here. But something happened that left kind of like a hole in me, and I never really felt great after that. I was sad all the time. I didn't feel like I had a lot of worth and all that kind of stuff. And later on, I decided that, my dad was a police officer, so I'll go into the family business. So I'll be a police officer and maybe I'll be able to help and all that kind of stuff. And I said along the way, I got the house, I got the girl, I got a little bit of money, but nothing ever filled the hole that was there. And I didn't even know what it was. Right. And, and I go, do you guys remember the Ferguson, Missouri stuff? And they're like, yeah, yeah, I remember that. I'm like, okay. So during that period of time, it was kind of a weird time for me because I had become a police officer because I thought I'd be helping people. Now I'm being spit at and I'm being told that I'm the worst person in the world. People wanted to see me hurt, right? Um, and it was really hard to handle. And I did still have that hole in me. Now that I look back, obviously 2020, it's there, but I've almost refused to accept it. But I was questioning faith. And I had bought the book, Is Heaven for Real, which is supposed to be a testimony of a little kid who actually died, crossed over, came back, and had these amazing stories of what it was and all that kind of stuff. I was like, I had that in my bag. I put that in my bag, and then I got shot that night. So I literally asked, God, are you for real? And then God said, careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
And so they thought that was kind of funny. But I was telling them, I told a story about getting shot. I'm running back. I'm saying my prayer. I think I'm dead. All this kinds of stuff. I explained what PTSD is, how your brain kind of seizes up and like fight, flight, or whatever. And I'm like, so I just told him after that, what I was going through, the dreams and all this kinds of stuff. But really the ups and downs, like getting upset about stuff, like getting into a situation that called for maybe like a 2 on the Richter scale, and I would come in at a 10, and about 20 minutes later I'd be like, oh shit, I've totally overreacted. And I looked around the room and I go, has anyone done that? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah. So I was like doing that a lot. And what would happen is when I would do that dip, when I realized what a scumbag I had acted like, and I even did some self correcting. I was like, now I can see I wasn't being a scumbag. Like I was sick. Like there was a lot going on. My brain was all screwed up, but I wasn't making the right choices and yada, yada, yada. I tell them about, I'm alone. I'm hiding in the house. I want to die. I'm basically like a dog in a corner who's been beat. I'll stay over here. You stay over there, all that kind of stuff. Explained to him at the year anniversary. Well, I explained to him I was no longer working with the police department and kind of some of the interactions I had with them afterwards that weren't so pleasant, even with particular officers. And that kind of, so I'm telling the story, and then I get to the point where, I'm having seizures. The police are in my house. We're about to have a full scale brawl. They're asking me if I'm beating my wife. They're asking her if I'm hitting on her. They're asking where the guns are. Have I pulled one that night? Have I ever pulled one that night? Like full about to go bad situation. And then one police officer said the smart thing of, does your wife deserve to be this scared? And I was like, no. He's like, then will you please go get your blood pressure taken? So I tell him about that. I tell him basically on the way to the hospital, I'm telling him, call all the security guards. It's about to go down. It's going to be a long night. You know what I mean? And heads are like bobbing and stuff like that. And then I tell them when I get there, they were about to sedate me, but they did the CAT scan. They saw that I had Press syndrome, so they started treating me for that. But then I went into alcohol withdrawal. I was going through withdrawal for like 3 days. I was like, I don't know if any of you guys have gone through any withdrawal, but it sucks. I was very grateful that I was within, the hospital and they were able to stabilize me. But at some point, I got pneumonia, which turned into double pneumonia. Right lung collapsed, and I was labeled the sickest person in the hospital. But then I was in a lot of pain. I'm telling about PTSD dreams, but then I tell them about the darkness. Like suddenly I found myself in the darkness, and there was a voice saying, come closer, the pain, you'll be free from the pain here. And then the thing started scratching me and like touching me in the darkness. And then I keep walking, I keep walking. It's saying, keep coming, keep coming. These things are starting to rip me apart. Now the person in front of me is laughing at me. Now the voices are laughing at me. It's full scale attack. I tell them this. I go, it's a full scale attack. One of the scariest things I've ever been through. I'm being assaulted from behind, if you know what I mean. And at some point during it, I just gave up. I submitted. And from that, I ended up in darkness and it felt like I was falling. And out of nowhere, I said, Jesus, please forgive me of my sins. But not only did I just say that, but I actually took account for the part that I had played. I actually felt the guilt, even though for the longest time I had been saying I'm a victim.
Mm.
Um, and then that's when I got caught. And that's when the light got bigger and I got closer and closer and closer and closer and closer, and I tell them all about that. And again, I'm just standing in front of these grown men, just trying to share my story. So, but I'm not losing anybody. You know what I mean? They're
Yeah.
still with me and everything like that. And I'm trying to cut some jokes here and there. Um, I told them about the alcohol abuse, absolutely. And then I told them after I got out, I couldn't even be left alone. No one trusted me. And as soon as I was left alone, about 3 months later, I'm a grown ass man. So I started having beers. I was telling about I was drinking in the morning before going to therapy. Um, I admitted to them that, on my way to therapy, that one day I had that oh shit moment where God kind of tapped me on the shoulder and was like, I can't save you anymore. You have to do something. So that's when I walked into the therapist and said, I've been drinking. She said, you got to do three things if you want to keep working with me. Call your wife, which I did, call your family, which I did, and go to an AA meeting, which I did. And then they asked me how long I had. I told them, it's what, almost 8 years. So it's pretty crazy. And I go, but that happened one step at a time, like
Right.
one day at a
Bring it
time,
home.
10 minutes at a time, like all that kind of stuff. And I've been like, and that story I just told you about the near death and everything like that. Like, everything was in there. Like the idea of the red car being right here and me looking to the left at the reporter and then hearing my grandma say, you should look at that red car. I told him about holding my grandma's hand in heaven, you know. And then I told him that I had gotten sober. My higher power was a chair. They like that. Uh, and
It's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. So I was telling him my higher power is a chair because it was making better decisions than I was. I told him how salty I was, didn't want faith to work, but I couldn't do it alone. And at one point, I hit my knees and asked for help. And that's when the obsession kind of was lifted from me. Not totally, but like something changed and I was able to stay sober. I did tell him about relapsing when I went to Kevin's wedding. Did I
Okay.
tell you this?
Uh,
So this is the way it works. And this is funny that they gravitated towards this. But before I went to a wedding, which was being held on an island, I had just gotten sober, right? Just gotten sober. So I'm telling the guy whose wedding it is, I'm like, I'm going, but I'm not drinking. It's an all inclusive resort. I know I'm going, but I'm not drinking. Okay. Okay. I'm telling my wife I'm going, I'm not drinking. And I tell these gentlemen today, I'm like, I barely made it off the bus before I grabbed a drink. Like it was that quick. I was like, I've paid for it. Let's do it. Let's tear it up. And they all understood that feeling. But then I admitted to them on the way home how I was already sneaking drinks at the airport on the way home. And by God's grace, I didn't take another drink from that point on after we landed. Uh, so that was like my relapse, and I was explaining to them as much as it sucked, like it was also like a reinforcement on how scary it could actually be because, you put together like a couple months, it's the hardest thing you can possibly do. It's like a huge achievement. And then for a second, you want to push back on it and be like, no, I'm better now. I can handle it now.
right.
It's I'm bigger, I'm stronger, and then it just didn't work for me. And immediately I felt the pull. Like I had just gotten rid of that like physical like pull addiction, like from 2 months of sweating it in the sheets, and now I'm like back in that boat, just fucking even worse than before. And man, I don't know what would have happened, but I told him about that, and I told him about, basically getting out there, putting the podcast together to try to share our stories. I told them about us and all that kind of stuff, and they thought it was really cool. And the guy who is, put me in that situation today, he's going to come on. And let me not get too far ahead of myself. So I kind of like tell my story, and I'm like, so
They're
that
responding. They're asking questions. They're asking for more details on a couple of topics.
they did. They actually asked for more details. So one of
That's
them
awesome.
asked me about falling in the darkness. Who do you think caught me? And I was like, it was Jesus. And it wasn't early, it was right on time. And I explained how that's how God seems to work. If we knew what we were going to get into, in some ways it would be easier if we knew how life was going to be. But in a lot
Yeah,
of
but they
other
would not really
ways,
learn, right? I
right.
mean, like we had a comment early on, one of the early ones, like, why don't we just do all this stuff in heaven? Why do we have to do it down here? I don't know, because we have to learn down here.
Yeah.
Well, this
Yeah.
is the vetting process to get to heaven, I guess. I don't know how else to say it. You're supposed to learn from here. You're supposed to make mistakes and learn.
And that's another thing I remembered while I was telling him. I was like, because know now that when I had my near death experience, I had returned to where I had come from. I had returned home.
Yeah.
So what that means is we all came from this place. We ended up in bodies that we didn't choose, and that we will end back up in that place. So
Yeah.
this brief stint in between maybe isn't supposed to be the happy place. Maybe this isn't maybe this is where we are supposed to learn.
Well, and I
Um,
thought about that before too. Like, just a quick little sidebar of it. Like, I've always wondered, like, maybe whenever you die, you go to the same spot, and it's only heaven or hell because of the way you feel about it.
yeah.
Like, it's like if it's in a place with no TV, but you can't stand with no TV, so it's gonna feel like hell. That's a really
Right.
oversimplification of it, but something to that effect. Like,
Heaven.
if you die as an alcoholic, then maybe the all eternity is having those night sweats in the sheets and feeling uncomfortable because you never have alcohol again, and therefore it makes you feel like hell.
My
I don't know.
experience, I get what you're saying for sure. Uh, my experience, the best way I can put how heaven felt is like an ocean of souls loving one another. You don't have to worry about loving yourself because you are so loved by everyone around you. Love thy neighbor that you don't even have to do it. And you're on fire to love everybody else,
Yeah,
and it's
like
just like,
like the chopsticks parable.
like the chopsticks parable, feeding each other instead of feeding yourself. Yeah.
Trying to feed yourself and being frustrated and angry, or you use these really long chopsticks to feed the guy across the table from you, and everybody's happy and loving. Just in case
So,
anybody doesn't remember that one.
yeah. So that was kind of like my story,
Yeah.
right? And I was worried about it because I was like, that isn't enough for these guys. You know what I mean? And so I started
So you were
talking
wrong.
about what I've learned since being a police officer,
Okay.
since all that. And I was talking about what we were doing. And I started just being blatantly honest about, things that have stood in my way most of the time. First off, it's me.
I gotta say
Um,
you went first. Yeah.
yeah, it's me. And it's my pride and my ego. My pride and my ego blocks new things because I think I already know. I don't need your info. I'm already good, and so I don't learn new things. Um, but then I asked them. I was like, "So, has anyone in here bought anything that actually fixed an emotional problem? Not made you feel better, but that fixed it?" And all of them were like, "No." I go, "Me either." Have you ever seen a U-Haul behind a hearse? And they're like, "No." Exactly. So all this stuff that people are accumulating, they don't take it with them. Does anyone in here think that someone who has more possessions or more money has a bigger slice of heaven than the person next to him? No. So why do we, drive ourselves crazy with I wish I had that, I wish I had this, when the number one thing we should be focusing on is our relationship with Jesus?
Yeah.
And they're like, huh. And I go, I know it's tough. It's tough. And then I was like, and I like did not want faith and I didn't want Jesus to be the answer, but he caught me in the darkness. And I spent the next 8 years trying to figure out what that was. Was it the medications I was on? One of them asked me, did you flatline? I was like, I wish. I wish, because then I could be like, that's when it happened. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I don't know when it happened and what exactly like my health was at that exact same at that moment. Like, did I actually flatline for a moment? Um, and so I talked to them about that, and I'm like, so what I'm working on right now, I need to rewind actually.
Yeah, about to get you
So
off topic a little bit. I apologize if I had to do you
no, no,
that.
no, no, no. So I was talking about that first year with them that I was getting sober and it was really hard and I had relapsed and like all that kind of stuff. And I'm like working on it and working on it, but I'm not feeling any better. Like my PTSD doesn't appear to be getting better. I'm sober, I'm connected to faith, but I'm kind of white knuckling it. And, you know, I'm like at the end of my rope. I don't think I can make it alive being sober. So I've got my back door set up, ready open. Um, and it put me in a place where I'm like, okay, well, I got nothing to lose. So I'm going to go talk about the last thing that I haven't discussed with my therapist. And so I openly said in front of these guys, so I sat in front of my therapist and I said, there's something else that I haven't shared with you. It probably means nothing, but when I was a child, my friend and I were taught an adult game by his mom's boyfriend. We did it quite a bit. But when that individual found out that my dad was a police officer, he threatened his mom with physical harm. And we were told we were sinners, that we were bad kids, that our parents wouldn't love us. And if they found out, they'd get rid of us. Everyone was dead silent, like dead silent. And I go, and I believed a lie. And so in that moment, you have two choices. You can either be like, well, based on this, the world is shit. And a lot of people go down that road.
Hmm.
Or you think, what I'm going to do is be a good boy and I'm going to work off all this sin. And maybe one day I'll get to heaven.
Yeah.
I go, neither one of those views is the right view because that's a 5-year-old kid trying to figure out what life decision he needs to make right here and right now. And the
Yeah.
thing about when you make decisions at 5 years old, the memory stays with a 5-year-old mentality. And I told him when I told my therapist about this, I started crying like a kid. Do you know that kind of crying where your chest, like, it's almost like it hurts? It's like spasming. And I looked at these grown men and they were like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, I was I felt like a 5-year-old sitting there. And I could tell by the eye contact, I was hitting some people. And I was like, and I was just so lost and I didn't know what to do. But suddenly the secret that I had kept for 30 years was coming out of it. I'm literally talking about the thing that's
Yeah.
left a hole in me that I didn't want to acknowledge. I explained to them that trauma couples with trauma. So unfortunately, if you get into something later in life, something that happened when you're a little kid might pop up, but that's okay because that's what happens. That's normal. And I go,
Right.
you know what that guy did? He manipulated two little children like a predator does. He
Right.
got in their heads, told them that they were losing the top three things in their world. They were losing their parents' love, they were losing God's love, and they were losing Santa Claus because now we're bad boys. Life's over, right?
Yeah.
So, and I explained to him, I was like, and that had such an impact on me that for the rest of even me being a child, I didn't want my little sister to catch the badness in me. Like that's how much it had been accepted. Okay, I'm bad. I'm going to try to work it off. But there was never enough I could do. Even when I got shot in the face, I hit the ground and I knew I hadn't loved enough people. But that, was me literally saying, I'm probably going to
Mm.
hell. And it's taken a long time to come around to that. And so I was telling him about that. And there were a couple eyes that weren't dry. And,
I bet. Probably struck a
um,
couple chords real deep. A few of them, who knows?
yeah. And I was just trying to honor God. You know what I mean? And I was like, so this happened. And now I realize that had I not been shot, I never would have handled that secret. I know that regardless of being shot or not, I would have been an alcoholic. It may have accelerated that
Yep.
process. But the truth is, we're all one bad thing away from leaning into something that could potentially harm us. And they all knew what I was talking about. They all knew what I was talking about. I was like, it turned into like almost like an AA meeting. And so I started telling about, the first time I went to an AA meeting and, how scary it was and all that kind of stuff. The second time I couldn't find the meeting, I called my wife crying, I can't find it. Blah, blah, blah. She's like, don't worry, I got you. It's right a couple like I was at Biani, if anyone knows where that is, and I couldn't find the building. I was literally in a very, very bad place, like in the parking lot, like crying. And
I
I
like
was
the high school, the Yanni High School.
mm, and
The high school
yeah,
here in St. Louis, if anybody doesn't know that.
yeah. And I told him about that, the little kid thing, and I told him about how much it affected me. And I felt like a lot of them knew what I was talking about. And then I talked about how that stuck with me, and I almost was my worst critic after that. Um, and how it's so sad that we can't give ourselves the grace that we would give somebody else.
Yeah.
I talked about my nephew. I've got like a 2-year-old nephew right now, and I look at him, and there's nothing that child could do to to ever eliminate my love. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? There's nothing that could possibly ever happen. And when I am able to feel that wholeheartedly, um, and it's a little raw right now, but it helps me know that maybe that's how God sees me, you know? And I haven't been able to like love myself like for real. And it also helps me possibly see how my parents love me or loved me. The cat just peed on the floor.
It's always something coming around. You're doing a good job, though, brother. You're doing a good job. Get to the cat
Um,
feed.
yeah.
Catch your breath.
So it's just like I I hate it's just such a mind screw, like the idea that
Yes, but
you
they
you
still
can
love you. They've always loved you.
you can
You believe the lie.
well, the problem is like until like Matt came around and I've really like picked him up and like loved him and like held him, you know what I mean? I haven't been I was finally able to kind of like maybe access how maybe God or my family saw me, which is I
Yeah.
know a weird thing. I've just never seen myself like
Right,
that.
right,
And so I
right.
didn't let anyone tell me like actually matter, but to actually like feel it and be like, maybe God loves me like this too. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's just like
It clicked. Something
it,
clicked inside of your heart and inside of your soul. It made sense to you all of a sudden. Something that
yeah,
you never really addressed before, understood before, and even could comprehend before. Uh, because you were still that 5 year old dealing with it. And now that you've
yeah,
kind of matured over the last couple of years dealing with all of this stuff. You've kind of grown internally too, and same with that trauma. So now you're not that same 5 year old when you have the trauma like you were before because you've already addressed it. You've accepted it. You understand, or you haven't completely, but you're working on
yeah.
it. And
And I
then you're right. But seeing that your nephew as a baby and innocent, brand new, and all that stuff, I bet you just the wave of emotions. You
yeah.
feel the love for this kid, like you said, your parents felt for you,
Yeah, I'm
and
like just
it
putting that
clicked.
together because I thought my parents saw me the way that I saw myself.
Right, right, right.
Do you know what I mean? So
But they did. They saw you that way all along.
and I've just had this blinder on since I was 5 years old that
Yeah.
I like literally never was able
There's
to
like an
appreciate.
emotional wall.
Yeah, because at any second I thought they were going to leave.
Yeah,
So I just like, I'll beat you to it,
yeah.
you know?
You can't hurt me if
Um,
I'm ready for you to leave. I
yeah.
mean, a lot of it's been that way with relationships too.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, I was definitely that way with relationships for a long time. Like, all right, fucking leave, See ya.
but the
You know?
point is, all the point I'm trying to make. First of all, you did a great job sharing it. I'm proud of you for sharing it.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing to do. But my only point to try to get to after this pain subsides and the emotions go away and the boiling water starts to calm down, realize that they did always see you that way. Accept
Yeah,
that.
I know that's really hard. I can't get there right now. But like
That's fine.
stuff's like shifting and stuff like that. And
You will. You
It
will get hooked. That's your
it was,
next goal.
and I said to these men, I go, have you ever, would you like, I go, so this happened to me when I was 5 and I couldn't even stand myself. And now I see a 5-year-old. Like, have you seen a 5-year-old lately? They're a baby. I go, have you seen a 16-year-old lately? They're a fucking idiot kid. Like,
Yeah.
you only know what you know when you're 16. You only know what you know when you're 5. You only know what you know when you're 20. Like, I don't care. You know what I mean? A lot of times you're being told what to do and you're just trying to figure it out. But I was able to like look at these people and be like, you are not defined by a few decisions you've made in your life.
Yeah. Or
Like,
a
you're
few
not.
decisions, a few things that have happened to you, or a few ways you've reacted to things. It
Right.
doesn't
Right.
define you. I had
Yeah.
we have a friend that going through something kind of recently, and I don't want to share too much of the story because I don't want to give it away who it is. But it's a traumatic thing, and I related to it in some way because I've been through some traumatic things like it, and I waited a few days to reach out, but I finally reached out and I said exactly that. You're not defined by this action,
Mm-mm.
and neither is my love for you. You're always gonna be my friend. Next time I see you, I plan on smiling and hugging and giving you, all that kind of stuff because you're still my friend, and that's not going to go away because of this one bad decision. And I don't know, maybe that person needed to hear it, maybe they didn't. It felt good to say it because it's something I would have liked to hear when I've gone through it. So it just felt like the pull to do it. So you're doing it now with them. We're doing it now on the podcast as best we can. I did it with this person. I mean, I wish I could do it with everybody. I wish I could always bring somebody up. That would be the greatest feeling ever.
And I felt really out of place, like when I was telling the story, but I was just like, I just got to do this for God. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm sorry I'm so emotional. It was just such a like a
Don't apologize for that,
it
brother.
just happened like a couple hours ago, and by the end of it, I'm like bonding with these dudes. I'm like telling them
Yeah.
like you are not defined by whatever puts you in here. It takes
Yeah.
sometimes a day at a time, 24 hours at a time, 10 minutes at a time, but like you are not defined by the bad things. I was like, what you need to do, or what I started to do, is I wanted to turn into Batman. I worked in the dark. I focused on myself. I got sober from myself. I learned that I need to put the mask on if the airplane's going down. I need to put it on me first, so I am capable of helping my family. I go, you guys stepping up and getting sober and like getting yourself together and focusing on you. The byproduct of that is your family will be better.
Yeah,
I go to
and some
AA.
of them are even staying longer for this vocational program to get a
Exactly.
skill.
That's
That's a
exactly what I
great
said to
step.
him. And I
It's a
go, you know
great
what
step.
happened when I was in
And
high
then,
school? Everyone told you you have to go to college, or you're kind of like you're either going to the military or who knows, you're just going to you're not doing much. I go,
yeah,
but
don't
that
do
was a
that. Only
lie.
losers go in the military.
I go, that's a lie. They all lied to us. It was schools that lied to us, and it was people who were willing to give children loans, right? They lied to us, and now the concept of $1 million plumbers out here. I hear you guys are doing, skills and stuff like that. You're going to get into trades. Heck yeah. My nephew that I was talking about, I'm going to tell him to take up a trade. It makes a lot more sense for some people. You get to do good work. You get to manage your own days. Eventually, you get to teach somebody else how to do it, maybe even an apprentice. Like, there's so much cool stuff there. And they're all like, yeah. And so by the end of it, like,
We did Mike Rowe to be around here like 20 years ago to help us out, right?
right.
The
And
dirty jobs.
yeah. And and so then I was like done. And I was like, I hope I did an all right job, guys. Like, I just want to let you know this was an honor that I got to be in here with you. I really appreciate it. Blah, 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 blah. And then it was just like really cool. One of them's like, hey, I got a quick question. When you were falling in the darkness, he's like, I believe in Jesus. Where do you think you were falling? And I go, to hell.
Yeah.
He goes, really? I go, yeah. And I go, and he saved me just in time. And that's the way God works, just in time. Another person talked about, because I told him that I had to call my wife who was at work. When I told my therapist that I had been drinking again, one of the steps to working with her was calling. And I said, that I had to tell her where I had hid bottles and stuff like that. The illusion that here's the one bottle I have on the fridge, but there's other bottles, in the house that way you're kind of nipping off of all of them. So it looks like you're not drinking as much. Anyway, that's a back door to the addict's mind.
Oh
And one of
wow.
the guys in the front row said, yeah, I had to call my mom, who I did not live with, tell her to go under her couch, unzip the bottom, and reach all the way in the back, and she would find my stash. He's
Yeah.
like, I had money there too, but that was mainly where my stuff was. And then and she's, he talked about his mom calling him Peanut and like, Peanut, you're drinking and blah, blah, blah. But it was just really cool that these guys were like receptive to coming in. And then the main guy was talking about, if you ever wanted to bring your podcast stuff in here, because I told all these guys, I go, you're literally going through a shit creek right now,
Yeah.
but it can be used to help someone else, and it
Yeah.
will be used if you keep going down the road. And I know it sucks, but one day at a time, and eventually you'll have a day where you're like, it's not so bad today,
Yeah.
and
Hopefully
then
that's
you
the
just
goal.
and then you put in more work, and then you grow, and you start to become a different person and lean into the things that are working. Again, for me, first it was sobriety,
Mm.
faith, medications. I got to take my medications. If I don't take my medications, who knows what's going to happen, right? I got to be stable so I can process. I talk to them about meditation. I talk to them about writing stuff down. And then before you know it, we're doing a SWOT analysis,
Yeah.
like a full on SWOT analysis. I'm like, all right, here's $100,000 course right here for you. I go, so we've done it on here: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I go, top tier companies use this all day, every day to figure out what's going on, and we can use it for ourselves. I go, so let's talk about Cameron's alcoholism. And I go, boom, boom, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, right? A strength. I go to a meeting here and there, you know, what's a weakness? I don't have a sponsor. What's an opportunity? I could be signing up for more stuff at the AA meetings. Like could be cleaning up, I could be bringing coffee, brewing coffee, whatever it is. That's an opportunity to grow. And what's a threat? And a lot of times, and they talk about it in there, it's people, places, and things. So the people that you would be around when you were using, the things that you would use, and the places you would use them. And I was like, and if I want to get real honest about this weakness right here, let's dig into that. Why don't I have a sponsor? They all looked at me like, huh? I'm like, because I don't like being told what to do. I'm, I'm lazy in heart, and I don't want to do the hard work a lot of the times. And, but that's the reason, flat out, right here and now, I can be honest with you. That's why I don't have a sponsor. Ask, ask, and you shall receive. The woman standing next to me goes, you want a sponsor? And I go, yeah. She goes, do you really want a sponsor? I go, yeah. And she goes, I'll have you a sponsor by the end of the day. And then she literally sent me and the other guy, who I guess is going to be calling me sometime today. Now I have a sponsor. And I looked out because I was kind of in shock. And I look out at the guys. I go, see, do you see how God works? Like, be
Yeah.
careful what you wish for. I just
Yeah.
said, I'm lazy. I don't want a sponsor. Boom. All of a sudden, someone hears it, puts it into action. I've got a sponsor. I've got a phone call this afternoon with somebody because of some words that came out of my mouth. And it was pretty funny.
So it's not
But
just words coming out of your mouth though. There's intent behind them. There's feeling. There's motivation. It's got
it's
love behind it. It's got feeling behind it. It's not just out of the blue, nowhere, willy nilly.
it's
You
weird
know.
how like when people are like hurting, how you kind of want to like fillet yourself in front of them and be like, you know what I mean? Like to
Yeah.
show that you're not looking at them, be like, I'm fucking broken too. But what was crazier, this is a sheet of paper. And again, this is all like an hour and a half ramble. And at the end of it, everyone said that I did a good job and all that kind of stuff. But I said faith was not like what I wanted it to work. Right. So I started digging more into it, and I've already talked about, alcohol was an allergy at first, and then I needed God to get sober. I couldn't be sober without God. And then I started digging into it more. I'm like, fine, let's talk about Jesus, and especially with my near death experience. Um, and I go, what impresses me about the story is you've got 12 individuals who were tortured and didn't change their story about what they saw when they witnessed Jesus.
Right.
And everyone's like, huh? And I just go,
That's
Peter crucified upside down. Paul beheaded. James beheaded. Andrew crucified on an X-shaped cross. Judas committed suicide. Thomas impaled on a spear. Bartholomew filleted alive and beheaded. Matthew died by the sword. James stoned and what is that? Clubbed. Clubbed. I was about to say stomped. Uh, Philip was crucified and Simon was sawn in half. John was the only one who potentially died
And he
of a,
survived. Yeah, he
yeah, he
just
died
survived like boiling in oil.
in
I,
isolation.
yeah, well, but then he got sent to a prison island, like in or
That's
wherever
what I
they would
mean.
do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's where he wrote Revelations
Yeah,
in prison
yeah.
after he didn't die.
But he ended up dying of, I guess, a natural death after he went through all that kind of stuff. But
I
what I
know, but he
said to
survived
them,
being boiled in oil.
and I said to them,
He doubled down, and wrote another book.
I know. And I said to them, I was like, I don't know about you guys, but if I'm about to feel some pain and changing my story
Take it
will
away.
relieve that pain, I'm going to change it. But these individuals did not because they knew if they denied what they had seen, they potentially couldn't end up in heaven.
Yeah,
And they were willing to take the pain here. Another example about how life here is actually very fleeting.
yeah. Think about how hard it is to get 12 people to agree on anything, even in court.
I know, same story. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like same story. Like this is it. The more you open your eyes to it, because I think somewhere along the line, I believed what I don't know who said it. I don't know how it was said. I think it's like basically spoken through society and the way we live. It's like, this is an old way. These are nice. The Bible's nice, but this is actually
yeah.
the way life is. You know what I mean? Like this is a great idea of how to live a life, but this is the way life is. And it turns out
Well,
it's
yeah. I
not.
mean, you learned how to be a police officer in the academy, but then you got to the job and you had a field training officer that taught you how to be a police officer in that department.
Yeah.
There's always something. There's always
My
there's
my
the book rules, and then there's the spirit rule, spirit of the law, and all that kind of stuff.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that just made me think of
I
my
think there's in
FTO.
everything.
He
It's
was
because we're all human. Oh, did you have bad FTO?
yeah. He was angry the whole time. Anyways. um yeah, so it's pretty amazing what's happening. I just mentioned to a couple people that were doing this podcast and now I'm speaking at a freaking jail
Yeah.
and they listened.
Oh, by the way, I shared with some of Julie's coworkers a little bit about our podcast, and that you do some of this talking with the PTSD support, and you've been going to churches and police academies and other wherever people have you to tell your story, and they said they were looking for somebody to talk about like going through troubled times and how to overcome them, to talk to those
Yeah.
guys, the group of laborers at like one of their meetings that they have. So I say, yeah, I'm sure he'll do it just whenever. So maybe he'll come around. Maybe I got
Yeah.
you another speaking gig.
That would
It
be
won't be
amazing.
jail,
It won't be a
but they're
jail.
labor, so they're almost there. I'm just kidding.
It was really funny because like in the middle of the session, like I'm getting like really into it. All of a sudden, an officer comes to the door, and I was in there for like 15, 20 minutes with these guys on my own, to the
Yeah,
point where I like when the guard came, I had to let him in. Do you know what
yeah,
I mean? Like he was like, I'm in the middle of my speech. I'm like, what am I supposed to do, guys? They're like, you gotta let him in. Like shit. So I let him in, and then he's taking a guy to medical because it turns out within this like group of it's a program that they're in. They get pulled out of general population. They get to kind of have a little bit more freedoms. The goal is, and they write a commitment thing. I'm going to be better. I'm getting my life together as a whole. It's not just about
they're actually
serving.
trying to
Yeah,
buy
yeah,
into the whole like I've done my time. Now it's time to be contributing member of society now again, and they're proving it inside there, and they're getting yeah, that's good. And
yeah.
thanks for
So
taking
that
the time. I'm supposed to work in jail.
yeah, and it was really cool. I was surprised how receptive they were. I told them afterwards. I shook every one of their hands. I just said thank
Good
you
for you.
for sharing your space with me. Like this has been great for me. I hope that it helps you. And on the way out, one of the main guy was like, "Hey, I don't know if you saw it, but there's a guy over there on the right where he was having a lot of tears coming out." Blah blah blah. I was like, I actually didn't see it, but a lot of guys, and I was saying this to them, have experienced childhood trauma but we
Yeah,
never talk about it. Never
yeah.
talk about it. and we've almost reclassified it in our head as something else. Like that's
Right.
not childhood trauma. That's just something silly that happened, or
Yeah.
that's what happens, or I shouldn't have been there, or like weird stuff like that, where you kind of cover it up with a lot of dirt and hope that something will grow over it, but it usually doesn't.
Part of that
Yeah,
variant in the box in the back of your mind. I know a lot of military members are really good at that. A lot of police officers are good at that. A lot of people in jail are probably good at it too. Criminals are probably good at it. Uh, but I mean, I think at some point in time it's going to come back to bite you. You're going to have to deal with it, no matter who you are, what the experience is, how good you've dealt with it to begin with, or not. I think it's still going to come back. You're going to have to unpack that box someday.
yeah, I totally agree. I
You might as
totally
well
agree.
you might as well pick a couple days here or there every out of the month and just open the box and pull one thing out, close the box up again, and deal with that one thing real quick. Let's figure it out.
Yeah,
Then go back to the box and pull one more thing out. Close the box real fast, or else it'll all get out there.
yeah.
Like Ghostbusters, where the all the ghosts bust out of the building after they turn the equipment off.
What was that the mayor who told him to turn it off? It's like, yeah, I
Yeah,
knew. Don't do that. Yeah,
yeah.
great movie. Great movie.
Cats and dogs living together, total chaos.
I miss those movies.
Yeah.
Um, I had something else,
Just
but
watched Tombstone for the first time in a long time. I've watched that a lot, but I hadn't seen it in a while.
I thought you were going to say for the first time. I was going to be like, sir.
No. Oh no, no. Oh no. No, that was one of those I would watch probably every week. Deployed or some training environment where all you have is your little computer with some, your hard drive with some movies on it.
Dude, I tried to
Everyone
watch the.
shares. We always share. Like I have a hard drive with like 15 movies on it, 20 movies on it. I go to my buddy's bunk and he's got one with 15 or 20 movies on. We just swap for a while and then I'll save all his movies on my hard drive. He saves all my movies on his hard drive, and then we got more movies, and we'll just do that. Napster before Napster.
There's going to be some young people out there who do not understand that at all. The idea of
Well, they
watching
probably don't even know what it's. No, they know what a hard drive is. I bet they still have that. They
DVDs.
probably don't know what Napster is.
No, not at all. Netflix has always been around.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we
Good
got
for
to
you,
talk.
man. I'm glad you got to do it. I'm glad you came out of it positive. I know you were nervous going into it. I don't blame you a bit. I think I was nervous for you last night. I don't think I slept very well either. But that's awesome. And
Yeah,
thanks for sharing it today with me. I needed it. I went out for a motorcycle ride to try to clear my head, and I got like 3 or 4 people cut me off or slam on the brakes right in front of me, and it's like I felt really invisible out there. You don't want to feel invisible on a motorcycle. That's for darn sure.
mm-mm.
That's not a great place to be. But I was getting to the point where I'm like, I'm about to start cussing at people. I'm like, I need to get home. Oh yeah, the podcast is getting ready to start soon too. Get home. That'll help. That'll help.
Yeah,
You need to talk to Cam. You hear Cam's story about the jail yesterday. That'll help. And sure enough, it has.
man, it was today. The jail was today.
The jail was today, this morning.
Yes, yes,
Yes, that's correct.
yeah,
Sorry, so
it
this is
was.
fresh.
No, yeah, it was fresh. I'm just like numbed out. I couldn't even like figure out what to talk about when I got home, but I'm still like processing and digesting it. I just can't believe that it was like, who the fuck am I to walk in there and tell anybody anything? You know what I mean? And
You're a
like,
human being that's gone through some trauma that is now talking about that trauma and helping other people deal with their trauma. And what
and
better
how,
place? Who else has trauma?
and
People
like
in jail have a
why,
lot of trauma.
and like how the heck does how? It's just such a weird thing.
No, no, no. You had it right the first time. Just do it for the greater goods and the higher powers and the chairs and the gods and whatever positive and love and all of
Yeah,
it.
just
Do it for love.
that's what I was doing. It's all I was trying to throw out like, I'm an addict. I'm a, I have PTSD. I have childhood trauma. Blah 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 blah. Like this sucks, but maybe it. I don't know. It's. I
Maybe
just
all
hope
that
it's.
suffering wasn't in vain and for no reason. Maybe you actually have a purpose now with it to help other people. And
Yeah, and I was trying
wow,
to tell
that can be
them
kind
that
of
too.
opening too.
You know what I mean? Like you are like. I was trying to tell them like they are powerful. Because we're all human
Yeah,
beings
yeah.
and we all deserve love and we all try our best as best we can with the situation we've been dealt in the bodies that we are assigned. So it's, we're all trying to figure it out. But by the end of it, I feel like we had come together like bonded sort of deal. I was giving them handshakes, high fives, all that kind of stuff, and hopefully it did something positive. And maybe I planted a seed. I talked about the tools for the tool belt and how if it's not meant for you, it could be meant for somebody else, and
Yeah,
you know, all that kind of good stuff. But
you did all
thank
you
you,
can do. The seed has been
thank,
planted. Now somebody else can water it, put some sunshine on it, and see a plant grow out of it. We'll be good.
yeah, thank you for talking to me about it. I needed to. Uh, I don't know, process that
Yeah.
our
You and I still
conversation.
need to. If you want to call me after this in a few minutes or a few hours when we're done recording, if you want to talk some more, I'm here.
It's just that one thing, and I'm okay. It's just like something is like shifted because it was like last night I was thinking about it, like the love I feel for Mac, and then like maybe that's the same way God sees me. You know what I mean? Instead of like you're fucking up, you know what I mean? Like, and then it like shines the light on, well, where did that voice come from? Why is that the way? You know what I mean? So then it's almost like you've been living on a movie set and some of the walls are starting to come down.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh shit. Like I haven't been living in reality. I thought this was here, but it's not. God's not the Eye of Sauron or whatever it is in Lord of the Rings, watching me from afar telling me I'm an idiot. Like maybe he really does see me as this child who's pretty helpless and just needs some love. And that's what
Yeah.
we're all looking for. Like it really is. I talked to
Yeah.
them about,
That's why it does good there. That's why
yeah,
you don't worry about being a police officer in a jail telling your story. Be a man telling other men your man story and how or
that's
overcome things. Which is
yeah,
men talking to men,
that's
adults
a
talking to adults, humans talking to humans, humans with childhood trauma talking to humans with childhood trauma. It doesn't have
yeah,
to be a police officer. It doesn't have to be law enforcement. Shit happens to everybody.
right. And I really like felt like God gave me a great opportunity today, to just kind of be like, all right,
Perfect.
maybe,
Hang your hat on
maybe,
that. That's the end of it. Why does it have to be anything more than that?
I don't, I just, it's,
Right?
I
Isn't
don't
that good
know.
enough? Isn't that pretty good? And that's a
Like,
win.
I know it is. I'm still waiting for the house to fall over, but it's, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's just like a weird thing. What? Kate even looked at me like, "You okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's just taking me a second, I think."
Yeah. Go
But
clean up that cat piss. That'll bring you off your high horse real quick
yeah,
and bring you
I
down to
better,
earth.
I better go do that right now, since the cat's never done that before, right next to her. So, and I
Yeah.
was in the room where her box is, so I'm probably about to get it. I love you, buddy.
I love you too, brother. Have a good
All right,
day.
all right.
Oh, keep that door cracked so the cat can pee.
It is cracked. She's just a
He's
bitch,
she's a cat. Cats, come
and
on,
she's like,
cats are devil spawns.
and she's almost 14 too.
You're talking about God. The cat's like, I don't go in there.
I'm gonna go piss him over here. Yeah, that was the devil. That was the devil.
Yeah.
All right, now I gotta go
Uh,
clean up.
yeah,
All right.
because you were in the middle of a spot
I was
with it in
literally
your
crying.
conversation.
Kate
Yeah.
Kate came in here and you could see it in her face. She was pissed, and I was like, "Something's happening." And then she's like, "Oh, you're on the scene." All right, so let me go handle it. I love you. Thank you for letting me get all that off my chest. It really, really helped.
You
Thank you,
got it.
everybody
Hey,
out there. Keep
yeah.
listening. I'm sorry I dumped a whole bunch of emotional stuff on you today, but I think it's a moment of growth,
It's just
and
proof
it's
that we all go through it. We all
yeah.
go through this.
And we can all help one
It's-
another. It doesn't matter what your job title is. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what you look like. We're all human beings and we all deal with sadness and depression and feeling lost and self questioning and all that kind of stuff. And lots of times we give voices to other people that echo those same things, even with people not even saying those things. And it's just like a crazy thing that we do to ourselves just by doubting ourselves and like wanting to like it's just it's a
yeah.
tough thing, life, but doing it
Just
together
pay
is a
it
little bit
forward with
easier.
more acts of kindness and showing
Yeah.
love and sharing love and trying not to be so quick to hate. It's easier said than done, but it's true. It's what we gotta try to
Give
do.
give someone the grace you wish that you could give yourself.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
one person and just do it and like run with it. And then after you feel what you feel, because you got to go into the tank when you're really picking somebody up. And when you actually feel that energy that you're trying to put into them, ask yourself, why don't I do that for myself?
Yeah.
Or how can I? What can I do to get myself to see myself the way that I see others? Why am I disqualified from that? What
Yeah.
made me unworthy? Who told me?
Well, well,
Why?
I think you keyed onto it earlier. I mean, one of the points of being here in this body and in this realm probably is to learn things, but also to give love. Don't look inward so much. Keep looking outward. Looking outward's going to help fix you inward. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
control what you can control. Do the best you can. Have a short memory. Don't dwell too much in the past.
Yeah.
Learn from it by all means. Use it to learn as a learning tool, but you can't change it. It happened. Couldn't happen any other way because it didn't.
Mhm.
Um, and then yeah, keep looking outward. Keep trying to produce fruit for other people's nourishments as much as you can. You'll get yours from somebody else's tree.
That's
You'll
the
get yours
plan.
from somebody else's fruit.
I love it. I
All right.
love it. All right. Until. Hey, if you like this content and you liked our past content and you want to see future content, please like and subscribe. Goodbye.